Spain, a land of vibrant culture, stunning landscapes, and rich history. But beneath its beauty lies a dark and tragic chapter that many would rather forget. A chapter that, until recent years, remained largely hidden from the world's collective memory: Spain's forgotten concentration camps. While the atrocities of World War II and the Holocaust are widely known, the Spanish Civil War, fought between 1936 and 1939, created its own brutal legacy. After the war, a regime of violence and repression under Francisco Franco lasted for nearly 4 decades. During this time, thousands of men, women, and children were imprisoned in concentration camps, forgotten by many, ignored by history. To understand the origins of these camps, we must first look at the Spanish Civil War, a brutal conflict that divided the nation. The war began in 1936, when Francisco Franco, a military leader in Spain's colonial army, led a rebellion against the Republican government, which was a coalition of left-wing factions, including anarchists, communists, and socialists. Franco's nationalists, backed by Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy, sought to overthrow Spain's democratically elected government. Over the course of 3 years, Spain was plunged into a bloody civil war that tore families apart, displaced millions, and left an indelible scar on the national psyche. The Republican forces fought fiercely, but they were no match for the nationalist military might. As Franco's forces closed in on Madrid in 1939, the Republican government was on the verge of collapse. On April 1, 1939, Franco declared victory, and Spain entered an era of repression, where his authoritarian regime would rule for the next 36 years. After the Civil War ended, Franco's regime sought to eliminate any remnants of Republican resistance. To do this, he created a vast network of prisons and concentration camps throughout Spain. These were not the death camps seen in Nazi Germany, but they were places of unspeakable suffering, sites where people were incarcerated, tortured, and forced into grueling labor. The Spanish concentration camps were meant to humiliate and break the spirit of the prisoners. These were political prisoners, former soldiers, intellectuals, and even civilians who were deemed to be a threat to the regime. The camps were spread across Spain, including in remote areas like Miranda de Ebro, Albatera, and Castura, designed to isolate these individuals and prevent any form of resistance. Life in the Spanish concentration camps was a daily struggle for survival. The conditions were horrific. The camps were overcrowded, and the prisoners were forced to live in dilapidated conditions. Many of them were denied proper clothing, food, or shelter, and disease ran rampant. Starvation was a constant threat, and food was scarce. Prisoners received little more than a few scraps of bread, a thin soup, or even worse, no food at all. Malnutrition and diseases like tuberculosis and malaria took a devastating toll. Those who were able to survive the inhumane conditions faced the constant threat of punishment or execution for even the smallest infraction. Many of these prisoners were put to work as part of the regime's forced labor program. They were sent to labor camps where they were tasked with building roads, working in mines, or constructing fortifications for Franco's military. These were back-breaking jobs that yielded little, if any, reward. The concentration camps in Spain were not widely known, either inside the country or internationally. While the world focused on the horrors of the Holocaust, Spain's camps remained overlooked. During Franco's reign, these camps were kept largely secret from the public eye, and those who survived were left to suffer in silence. After Franco's death in 1975, Spain began a difficult transition to democracy. The new government, eager to unite the country, implemented their Pact of Forgetting. This informal agreement prevented any public reckoning with the abuses committed by Franco's regime, including the existence of the concentration camps. As a result, these camps remained largely forgotten. For decades, the survivors of these camps struggled to have their stories heard. Many families had no idea what had happened to their loved ones, men and women who were torn from their homes and vanished into the system of repression. Some of the most infamous camps included those at Miranda de Ebro, Albatera, and Castura. Miranda de Ebro, located in the Basque region, was one of the largest and deadliest. Over 20,000 men passed through its gates, many of whom died from disease, malnutrition, or abuse. Albatera, in Alicante, was another notorious site. It was used as both a prison and a forced labor camp, where Republicans and political dissidents were made to work under harsh conditions. Albatera was notorious for its inhuman treatment of prisoners, with countless individuals dying within its walls. Castura, located in Badajoz, housed thousands of prisoners and became infamous for its extremely brutal conditions. The camp's authorities were known for subjecting prisoners to cruel punishment and executing those who tried to escape. One of the defining features of the Spanish concentration camps was the widespread use of forced labor. The prisoners were not only detained for their political beliefs, but they were also subjected to intense physical labor. Prisoners were sent to work on military projects, mines, and infrastructure that helped sustain Franco's dictatorship. The labor was grueling, and many prisoners never returned home. They were often forced to work long hours in dangerous conditions, with little to no protection. The regime exploited the labor of thousands to further its control over Spain's economy and infrastructure. While much of the world was focused on the Nazi concentration camps during World War II, Spain's camps were largely ignored on the international stage. Franco's regime managed to maintain diplomatic and economic relations with many Western powers, including the United States and the United Kingdom, which shielded Spain from global scrutiny. As a result, the brutal conditions within Spain's camps were not widely known, and their victims were often left without the recognition they deserved. The international community's blindness to Spain's repressive tactics left many in the dark about the true extent of the suffering that occurred under Franco's rule. In the years since Franco's death, a movement has grown to uncover the truth about Spain's forgotten concentration camps. Activists, historians, and victims' families have worked tirelessly to shed light on this dark chapter of Spanish history. Many survivors, often in their old age, have shared their stories, and sites of former camps are being recognized and preserved. Memorials and museums are dedicated to remembering the victims, and efforts are underway to ensure that future generations do not forget the pain and suffering endured by so many. Though many of Spain's concentration camps have been lost to history, the survivors' stories are beginning to resurface. It is crucial to remember these camps, not only to honor the victims, but to ensure that such horrors are never repeated. The recovery of this history is a vital part of Spain's journey toward reconciliation. By remembering these forgotten camps, we confront a dark truth, and in doing so, we protect the future from repeating the mistakes of the past.